All right, when did you guys get to camp? I got here Sunday night. When did you get here? Saturday, some of you. How many of you are staying in some sort of cabin that you own or something? Okay. How many of you are staying in a camper that has wheels? Okay. Anyone staying in a tent? Oh, okay. I think I see one tent camper. Okay. Well, when I got here Sunday night, I start carrying this stuff in from my car. And I don't know if maybe you all do this, or maybe I just have maybe I'm a little too controlling. I start to set my stuff up in my room. I'm staying in the lodge. I start to set my stuff up just where I want it. I got, this is where my clothes are going to go, and this is where my video games are going to go. Just kidding. I have no video games. I have 3 kids. I don't have time for that. But I'm setting my books up. I got a little chair with my books, and I'm arranging everything. And what I'm really doing is I'm making it comfortable for myself because I know I'm going to be here for a couple days. I'm making it comfortable for myself, but I also noticed I'm setting this up in a way that resembles my home. I have a desk in my office. I love my desk. It's one of my favorite places to be. So I got a little tiny desk in my room in the lodge, and I'm kind of organizing it similarly and putting my clothes where I would put them. And I got a cooler full of cool things. Don't even ask. And so I'm arranging it so that I can dwell here and so that I can live here. And it does reflect my home a little bit. It's not a perfect reflection of my home, but it reflects my home a little bit. So that is essentially what the tabernacle and the temple are in the Bible. They are intended to be patterned after heaven and a reflection of heaven. We'll get into greater detail about this tomorrow, but if you read the descriptions of the temple in the Old Testament, you'll find the decor or the motif of the temple is basically gardens and angels. It's like pomegranates and palms and plants and flowers, or seraphim, cherubim. The whole decor of the temple is just heaven. And there's a bunch of gold. Everything's overlaid with gold. And I don't know if you notice that there's like incense, so it's filling with smoke. And then we'll get into today the Ark of the Covenant, which is like essentially God's throne. The whole idea is to recreate on earth what the throne room looks like in heaven. And they do that with Moses and David in a tent, and then later Solomon builds a temple. We'll do the temple tomorrow. But today I want to look at 2 tabernacles or 2 tents, okay? The first is the tabernacle of Moses. You guys familiar with the tabernacle of Moses? A couple of you? You guys ever been to the tabernacle replica in Lancaster? About every 5 years, our church takes a little field trip out there. Some people think we're going to Shady Maple. I'm like, no, Shady Maple's the second purpose of this trip. I'm trying to teach you guys the Bible. Yeah, a lot of people signed up just to go to Shady Maple. So the pattern of the tabernacle of Moses is laid out in Exodus 25 through 39. That's 14, 15 chapters. I was thinking we would read all 15 chapters today, but then I was like, nah, maybe we won't do that. We're going to just read the beginning of the construction of the tabernacle. I think it's only one slide. Then instead of reading the next 15 chapters, I'm going to show you like a little virtual tour of the tabernacle of Moses, try to get you oriented with that, and then we'll just read the passage that wraps the whole thing up. So, Matt, if you can give me yep, perfect. This is Exodus 25, verses 1 through 9. Let me just sneak up here so I can see it. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Tell the sons of Israel to take a contribution for me. From everyone whose heart moves him, you shall take my contribution. This is the contribution which you are to take from them: gold, silver, and bronze, violet, purple, and scarlet material, fine linen, goat hair, ram's skins dyed red, fine leather, acacia wood, oil for lighting, balsam oil for the anointing oil and for the fragrant incense, onyx stones and setting stones for the ephod and for the breastpiece, Have them construct a sanctuary for me so that I may dwell among them, according to all that I'm going to show you as the pattern," that's a key word, pattern, "of the tabernacle and the pattern of all its furniture, so you shall construct it." Now, I could tell a lot of you perking up when we were talking about scarlet material, ram skins dyed red, and different stones. That's usually where people come alive. They love these meticulous little details. I'm being sarcastic, of course. You could read 15 more chapters of basically a blueprint of how the tabernacle of Moses is constructed, but you might need a cup of coffee in the middle because it's incredibly detailed. And we will continue to revisit that concept this week. But the main thing that I just, as an example, notice all the precious stones in verse 7. Onyx stones and setting stones. I don't know if you remember, but yesterday when we read about the throne room, there was a bunch of references to precious stones and metals and things like that. So you can kind of see, even in the tabernacle of Moses, we're beginning to try to establish something that reflects the throne room of God, but on earth. Okay? It's called a pattern twice in the last verse there, verse 9. The word pattern is used, and the book of Hebrews explains that like the whole tabernacle is patterned after heaven. Now, I want to just take you on a little visual tour of the tabernacle of Moses. These slides are not the brightest in the world, but I think you'll be able to get a sense of what we're looking at. So, yeah, perfect. That's actually Earl Peace took this picture. Oh, sorry, Earl. I knew you wouldn't hate me for that. I hope. So, this is the camp. Okay, this is the tabernacle, but also it's surrounded by the tribes of Israel. You probably know this, but every tribe was essentially assigned a direction that they had to live in. Now, this is really important for us to understand, that this tabernacle was mobile. It was portable. They had to pack it up and move it. And how did they know where to put it? Well, see that pillar of cloud that's above it? That is not smoke from a fire. That is God's manifest presence among his people. They didn't set up the tent and have smoke emanate from it. That pillar of smoke, or at night a pillar of fire, would move around, and they had to follow it. They didn't control it. Let me just say that again. They didn't control it. They didn't control it. They followed it. When it moved, they moved. When it stayed, they stayed. So wherever it was, that's where it was. That's where they had to go, which is why they all had to live in tents. Because you can't dig a foundation, put down some stone, some brick, and build a house if the next day the pillar of fire might move or the pillar of cloud might move. They had to live these kind of flexible, portable, responsive lives, and wherever the pillar went, that's where they went. So that's why God is in a tent, and that's why they're in a tent. Now, really quick, every tribe of Israel was assigned the same basic place. So even if they picked up and moved and traveled a couple days and settled, every tribe had to settle back in the same place. So for instance, the front of the tent, which is kind of on the lower left corner here, the front entryway, the tribe that was positioned there was a tribe of Judah. You had to go through the tribe of Judah in order to approach God. And the word Judah means praise. I will enter his gates with thanksgiving in my heart. I will enter his courts with praise. And who's a famous descendant from the tribe of Judah? Yeah, not A.B. Simpson. Jesus. So you have to go through Judah to get to God's presence. This is all foreshadowing Jesus. Of course, they don't realize that, but their descendants would eventually see the brilliance and the genius of God, who has been preparing their hearts for generation upon generation upon generation to receive Jesus. So this is the camp. Next picture is just going to zoom in a little bit on the tabernacle and the courtyard. See there's like curtains on the outside. So on the outside is called the camp. On the inside is called the courtyard. You have a little bit of a better view, a close-up view of the tabernacle. and also the pillar of fire. This tabernacle, just for reference, would be smaller than what we're sitting in right now. And of course, it's a cube, it's a rectangle, but it would be smaller than where we're sitting right now. I don't know, maybe from where I'm standing to like the sound booth approximately, and maybe probably would fit between these columns and maybe this second row of columns out here. So it's not huge. Our sanctuary in Philadelphia, which is not particularly large, is approximately the same size as the tabernacle. So it's not huge. It's not this giant thing. It's not the temple. It's not a Colosseum. Remember, it has to be portable. People have to carry this and move it, and they have to be able to set it up and tear it down. Give me the next slide, Matt. Thank you. Oh, this is the altar. This is where sacrifices would be made. See, there's the essentially horns coming off of the corners. So this is where priests would bring the offerings and the sacrifices that people were bringing to God, and they would prepare them and they would burn them here. So that is smoke coming out of the altar. And give me the next one. Okay, this is called a laver or a basin. All right, this is not a bird bath, but it does fulfill a similar role. So this is where priests would wash themselves before they're about to do the sacrifices and make an offering to God. They would wash their hands, and it fulfilled another purpose. This is the closest thing you had to a mirror back then. Water in a metal basin was how you could see what your appearance was. So you looked at it and you realized how dirty you were, and then you got cleansed. This is called a laver. So I hope this is a pet peeve of mine. Give me the next one, Matt. Okay, you guys know what this is, right? Okay, this is the logo of the Christian Missionary Alliance. It's a beer stein, a wine glass, a drink stir, and a broken beer bottle. Thank goodness you laughed. I was so nervous for how that was going to go. Woo! All right. No, it's a cross, a pitcher, a crown, and a laver. That one on the right, the red one, is not a wine glass. I know a lot of people think it's a wine glass. It's actually a wash basin. I compare it to a pedestal sink. Some of you may have those in your bathrooms or at home. It's not a wine glass. It's a laver. It's a wash basin. I know that if you think it's a wine glass, you might need to get into like some sort of 12-step program. If you see that and you're like, wine. No, it's a laver. So I just wanted to correct that. You can go home and tell your pastor, and this is what I learned at Summit Grove. And he'll say, that's it? All right, give me the next one, Matt. Thank you. Okay, this is a little harder to see, but at this point we're inside the tabernacle. So it's dark, guys. They don't have good lighting in there. But you see the candles, 7 candles. You might recall when we read in Revelation 1 that there were 7 lamps in the throne room of God. Give me the next one. Jesus is the light of the world. That's what that's preparing our hearts to receive, is that Jesus is the light of the world. Oh, this is the incense. I know you can't really see that. This is the incense, so it's just burning incense. You read about the throne room. It's full of smoke, and there are references in the book of Revelation to incense being burned. And so that's where that's taking place. Give me the next one. The showbread. 12 loaves for the 12 tribes. Jesus said that he is the bread of life, right? So again, preparing. This is supposed to be a gift for God. This is an offering that's made to God, and it's flat because there's no yeast used in it. And maybe you probably know this, but yeast represents sin in the Bible. And so here is an offering that's given to God with no sin in it. It's pure, it's holy, it's not compromised. Give me the next one. Okay, here's the curtain. The curtain, you can't really see this in this picture, but in the top left you'll see some yellow, and on the top right you'll see some white. Those are the images of angels, or images of spiritual beings. The ones we read about yesterday, the seraphim, we talked about cherubim, and that's what's there. So again, the theme, the decor, the motif is heaven. What would I see in heaven? That's what I want to see in the tabernacle. Okay, I have one more slide here. What's this? The Ark of the Covenant. This is what Indiana Jones was after. Let me tell you a little bit about the Ark of the Covenant. I love this. There's a book by A.B. Simpson called Christ in the Tabernacle. Some of you may have read it, you may have it. It's a short little book that shows where Jesus is in all of the elements and aspects of the tabernacle. This is the Ark of the Covenant. Now, do you know what's inside the Ark of the Covenant? Oh, good. So you do know some of the stuff. Great. So the Ten Commandments, the tablets of the commandments, that's one thing. There's 3 items. Those 10 Commandments, what else? Aaron's staff. And what's unique about Aaron's staff? It had budded. It was a piece of wood that was taken off of a tree but still produced fruit and leaves, right? There's a third thing. Wow, jar of manna. Holy smokes. I don't think I've ever been in a group that knew all 3 items. Okay, great.
What do you expect?
I don't know. A jar of manna. The manna that they collected, they were able to preserve one jar, and God did not allow it to rot. You guys know about the manna. It's supposed to rot after one day, and this stayed. Okay, now this whole thing is plated with gold. And then on the top are cherubim, which are not the same as seraphim. It's a type of spiritual being. Cherubim are generally associated with like protection. Psalm 99 says that God is seated above the cherubim. So if this is cherubim, where's God then? Right above them. And that's how Israel thought of the ark, was the cover of this box, which came off. It's called the atonement cover. That's where Moses would sprinkle blood. God was, they believed, and in their mind and their concept was, God was above those 2 cherubim. So this was God's throne, which they are in some senses recreating on earth. And you probably know that one priest once a year would approach this and offer one sacrifice in order to make atonement for the entire people. It was a very serious thing, and that priest had to really make sure that his heart was pure. So this is the tabernacle of Moses, and we could spend a little more time on that, but there's a whole other tabernacle that we have to get to. They would take this into battle. It was like God was going into battle ahead of them. They would carry this in the battle. You guys probably know the story of a man named Uzzah, who, when they were carrying this on an ox cart, the ox cart started to get unstable, and he just reached out to stabilize it, and what happened to him? He died, right? The issue there is that it never should have been on an ox cart, right? It has, I don't know that you can see in the picture, but there's little rings. You're supposed to put poles through the rings, and the priests are supposed to carry God's presence on their shoulders. So God is, even in the tabernacle of Moses, God is training us that my people are supposed to carry my presence, and instead they put it on a machine, an ox cart. If I was doing a sermon and not a Bible study, I would say that here's the application, that all of our little religious machinery and programs, and that's not intended to carry God's presence. It's the people that are supposed to carry God's presence. But this is a Bible study, so I'm not going to say that. So they would take this into battle, and then one day it got captured. Imagine that. It got captured in battle. And it got passed around from enemy to enemy to enemy, and some of the enemies, I think maybe it was the Philistines, who had, was it the Philistines? The Philistines had this, and they started getting tumors all over their bodies. And it was outside of Israel for a long time, and then came along King David. And we're going to just fast forward to the point where David is the king. David had it in his heart to get the ark back. David loved God's presence. David was a worshiper. Hard to do 5 days on worship without talking about David. David was a worshiper. David wanted to get the ark back, and he did. Went into battle, defeated the enemy, got the ark back. He's going to bring it into Jerusalem. Now, they don't have the tabernacle of Moses anymore. All been lost and destroyed. I mean, they've settled into the promised land at this point. They're just in a different phase of history. And then why are we setting up the tabernacle of Moses when there's no ark to put inside of it? And David's like, I want that ark back. We got to get that back. So he does get it back, and he decides, that story of Uzzah is part of the process of bringing it into Jerusalem. They finally get into Jerusalem. You probably know this story. You can give me the next one, Matt. This is, I'm going to skip that for the sake of time. Give me the next one. That's the completion of the tabernacle. That's it. You guys probably know this story. David is bringing the ark into Jerusalem. He's finally in the city limits. He's pretty much got the ark back. This is one version of the story. You can find the story in a couple different places. But David was dancing before the Lord with all of his strength. David was wearing a linen ephod. So David and all the house of Israel were bringing up the ark of the Lord with joyful shouting and the sound of the trumpet. Then it happened as the ark of the Lord was coming into the city of David, that Michal, that's his wife, the daughter of Saul, looked down through the window and saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, and she was contemptuous of him in her heart. Now they brought in the ark of the Lord and set it in its place inside the tent which David had pitched for it. David offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. So you probably know this story that David is so overjoyed to be bringing the ark back into Jerusalem that he's dancing. He gets a little wild. And another version of the story says he dances so much that his clothes come off. And his wife starts complaining. Oh, wives. Why are you in your underwear in public again, they say. Like, get off my back, lady. It's in the Bible. If you ever hear a story of me wandering through Philadelphia in my underwear, it's just this. I'm just celebrating God, all right? So, glad I gave you that image. Now, there is a little tiny detail in this passage. This is what I want to draw your attention to. It's in the last verse, verse 17. They brought the ark of the Lord and set it in its place inside the tent which David had pitched for it. Here's a question I want to ask. How many of you have heard of the tabernacle of David or David's tent in the Bible? I see less than 7 hands. Now maybe you're just being like, okay, now you're all getting bold. Like, yeah, I know that. Okay, less than 10 hands. I've found, and I did not know about this until I was in my 30s. I found that this is one of the probably least developed areas of like Old Testament history in the church, that we don't realize that David pitched this tent. Again, this is not Moses' tent. This is David's tent. And I'm going to tell you what happened in David's tent. And I take responsibility for this, but also I am surprised at how little this is taught. Yeah, well, in the tent of David is in the New Testament, which we'll see today. Let's get into it, and then we'll explain a little bit more. Okay, so the tabernacle of David, unlike Moses' tabernacle, which has 15 chapters, the tabernacle of David's kind of spread through 2 Samuel, 1 Chronicles, 2 Chronicles. So I just created one slide that's going to summarize what happened in David's tabernacle or David's tent. So you can cross-reference or check all these verses. I didn't make any of them up. But, okay, so David is the king. David is rich, he's wealthy, and he establishes this tent, and he puts the Ark of the Covenant in it. Again, this is not Moses' tabernacle. We don't know that it had showbread in it. We don't know that it had the altar of incense. We don't know that it had a lot of the furniture and furnishings that we've talked about before. This is just something David wanted to do. David, because he was a worshiper, thought, I want my own tent, and I want the Ark of the Covenant in it. And I want to worship God in that tent. This was just something that was in his heart to do. And the tent was a place for God to dwell. This is in 2 Samuel 6, as well as 1 Chronicles 15. This is a place for God's presence to dwell. Now, in Israel's history, we're not in tent phase anymore. We're in house phase. But they're still setting up a tent for God. At the end of David's life, he's going to realize, if we're all living in houses, why do I have God in a tent? And he's going to have a temple built by his son. We'll do that tomorrow. But at this point, they're all living in permanent homes. They've settled into the land. But he establishes this tent as a place for God to dwell. So the tabernacle of David, first and foremost, is a place for God's presence to dwell. It is also a place of continuous worship. This is in 1 Chronicles 16 and 23. It says that David, with all of that king's payroll and that king's bank, employed 4,000 musicians and 288 skillful singers. This is in the Bible, I promise. David had all the money that he needed. He's the king of Israel, right? I can just imagine how this conversation went. Hey, King David, what are you going to do with all that money? We going to go to war and build a big old throne? And he's like, well, I was thinking about that. How do we feel about musicians? How about 4,000 musicians and 288 skilled singers? I would love to know why they picked 288. Like, who's the 289th person that didn't make the cut? Like, sorry, we're paying a lot of people and you just don't have what it takes. 4,000 musicians, 288 skillful singers. David is paying them. It's their occupation. This is so important to David that he's spending tax dollars on this. That we're going to make sure that we have this. We're going to get the best musicians, the best skillful singers, and we're going to establish them to sing. And then how did they do it? 1 Chronicles 25 broke them into 24 teams based on family. I think it's interesting that they somehow established continuous around-the-clock worship, and they had 24 teams. It doesn't say this, but the implication is everybody took an hour. Because there's no way one person can go 24 hours, 7 days a week, right? I think that's where some of these things get overwhelming, like, but I can't do that. That's fine. You were never intended to do this by yourself in this type of setting. This is something that the entire people of God are supposed to participate in and support. So they break the teams up into 24 teams based on family. Again, it's not explicitly stated in the Bible, but I think it's safe to assume probably just on 1 hour shifts as a team rotating. And again, this is their profession. This is their occupation. The tabernacle of David is a place of offerings and sacrifices. They were supposed to bring offerings to God, sacrifices to God. And these offerings are supposed to cost them. Again, I'm probably going to do this all week. If I was preaching a sermon and not doing a Bible study, I would say, this is going to challenge the approach to worship we have, like we're supposed to get something out of it. They're bringing something. We're always like, what am I going to get? I'm not getting anything out of this. I wonder if what would it do to us if God said, your worship, I'm not getting anything out of this? Which is what Amos said, and we'll get to Amos in 2 days. Their worship was not about what they could get out of it, it was what they could bring to it. So, consumerism, not present in the tabernacle of David. Sacrifice and offering was present. The tabernacle of David is a place for the word of the Lord to be proclaimed. So, this is kind of a crazy statement in the Bible. I don't know exactly what is meant here, but it says in 1 Chronicles that the musicians would prophesy with their instruments. I don't even know what that means. I have a hunch. So either it means that they would prophesy while playing their instruments, or it means that they somehow deliver the word of the Lord through the playing of the instrument. Have you ever heard of a piece of instrumental music that just moved you? Well, if we can accomplish that in our own human ingenuity, why can't the Holy Spirit even use instrumental music to communicate His word to us? So I don't know which one of those it is, but it just says that they would prophesy on their instruments. And then speaking of the instruments, the Tabernacle of David is a place of creativity. David invented the instruments that they used in the tent. I love this, because when I think king, I think like warrior. If you told me King David invented things, I'd have been like, yeah, weapons. No, instruments. Stringed. David's got a real Bruce Springsteen thing going on right here. A little, or Bon Jovi. Heard Bon Jovi on the radio yesterday. If you don't know who Bon Jovi is, I'll teach you later. There's a real, combination of warrior but also worshiper going on here in David's life. He's like a tough guy, but also making flutes and guitars and stringed instruments and things like that. He invented the instruments, and then it also says he taught people how to play them, which he would have to if he invented it, right? Go ahead.
David used his harp to soothe Saul.
Yes, Saul. Yeah, King Saul in the Old Testament, when he was tormented by evil spirits, David would play on his harp to bring peace. So, boy, there's a whole thing there about the role of worship in spiritual warfare and the role of worship in deliverance that we could get into. Excellent point. Thanks for bringing that up. Also, if you read through the book of Psalms, some of them right in the heading will say, for use in this setting. Some of the Psalms you read were written in this environment. Came out of this tent. David, mostly David, but maybe some other people, were probably in this tent worshiping, and they get a psalm and they write it down, and now we got the new song for the next set list that we're going to sing here. So I just love the creativity that comes out of the Tabernacle of David. So when we talk about the Tabernacle of David, we're talking about a place for God to dwell, a place of continuous worship, a place of offerings and sacrifice, a place for the word of the Lord, and a place of creativity. That's essentially what the Tabernacle of David represents. Everybody got that? So now you know a little bit about the Tabernacle of David. Now, we're going to take questions in a minute, but there's just one thing I got to show you about. This is why I think this is important. In Acts 15, does anyone know what important event happens in Acts 15? Yeah, it's council. It's a council year, and it's held in Jerusalem that year. We just had a Columbus Council. Acts 15 is the Jerusalem Council. The issue they're trying to settle in the Jerusalem Council is premillennialism. Just kidding. I'm just getting this off my chest. The issue they're trying to settle at the Jerusalem Council is, what do we require from non-Jewish people when they come to Christ? We've been circumcising everyone. They're all Jewish Christians. So they're like, we've always been circumcising people. We've always been requiring that they eat a kosher diet. But now all these non-Jewish people are coming in, and requiring them to do these things is creating an obstacle. And so what is the essence of the church? And, what do we need to still demand of Gentiles that come to Christ, but also what do we need to not demand of Gentiles that come to Christ? So that's what they're trying to settle at the Jerusalem Council. And in the midst of a bigger chunk of Scripture, which we will get to on Friday, it's James that speaks up, if you can give me that, Matt. And James says this. He says, Simeon has described how God first concerned himself about taking a people for his name from among the Gentiles. The words of the prophets agree with this, just as it is written. After these things, I will return, and I will rebuild the fallen tabernacle of David. And I will rebuild its ruins, and I will restore it, so that the rest of mankind may seek the Lord, and all the Gentiles who are called by my name, says the Lord, who makes these things known from long ago. This is a quote from Amos when he says, the prophets have said. He's referring to Amos. But I just want to show you that in the Tabernacle of David is not this obscure, random Old Testament fact. The early church, when they were trying to figure out what does it mean to be a Christian and what should the church look like, they said, God's going to rebuild the Tabernacle of David. And I really think that, whoops, daisy, I really think that the Tabernacle of David serves as a model for what the church should be. Continuous worship, place of creativity, offerings and sacrifices, declaring the word of the Lord, a place for his presence to dwell. I shared yesterday that 17 years ago, my wife and I planted a church. Man, I must have read about 100 church models. Presbyterian, elder-led, apostolic, missional communities, attractional. I wish I had known about the Tabernacle of David as a model. The model. I mean, this is essentially where we're going for the rest of the week. Is that I want to show you that if we get the throne room on earth, this is what it's going to look like. Not in a tent, not in a temple, but in a people. The church. And that the church should be a place of creativity, and the church should be a place of offerings and sacrifice, and the church should be a place where the word of the Lord is proclaimed, and the church should be a place where his presence dwells. That this is the model all along. A place of continuous worship. A place where we speak his word. And if you look, what's the result? All of the Gentiles come to the Lord. And this is, to me, old school, deeper life and missions theology. If we will establish this type of environment, we will send people out to the nations. And the nations will come to us. And just, I want to remind you, because I think sometimes we forget this. I wish Abraham Sandler was here today to help me here. Most of you are the Gentiles this is talking about. I mean, unless you're Jewish, which some of you may be. But most of us, we forget sometimes, because we always associate ourselves with Israel in the Old Testament. No, man, you're a Philistine. You're the bad guy. You're the other. And I just think sometimes it's good for us to be reminded of that. For those of us that live in the United States, it's maybe not so much anymore, but at one point was predominantly Christian, and you kind of felt like you were the majority. Sometimes it's helpful to remember, like, well, we as Gentiles, we're the minority in the church at one point. And there's more people to reach. And we have been brought in. Like, we were distant and far off from God. And Ephesians says we've been brought close to God through Jesus. So I just see this connection here. So what we're going to look at, like, tomorrow we'll look at the temple. Tomorrow's what, Wednesday? Tomorrow we'll look at the temple. Thursday, we'll look at the corruption of the temple. And then Friday, we'll look at the church as God's plan to bring correction